Welcome to the Leap Health Workplace Podcast. Here we explore innovative, proven health and wellbeing solutions to drive your performance and productivity. Leap Health empowers individuals and organisations to prioritise their health and wellbeing as a catalyst to performance and productivity. We do this by providing workplace health and wellbeing performance workshops and also the Leap 360 one-to-one leadership coaching to drive health, wellbeing and performance, powered by the Game Changer Index Energy for Impact profiling tool. And we offer bespoke corporate programs to ignite proactivity in ownership at all levels of health and wellbeing as a catalyst to performance and productivity. Whether you're sat at your desk right now or on the move, get ready to listen, get ready to invest your time and take action straight after. I'm Anna Ready. Let's get ready to make small steps to leap health. Welcome to the episode today, and this is a part of 3 episodes where we're exploring different areas of sleep. So we've already had one from Dr. Iden around misconceptions in sleep, but today I'm thrilled to be joined by Dr. Caitlin Chasser, who is going to open our minds to managing and supporting sleep for women's hormonal health. This episode is going to empower you to add even more tools to your sleep toolbox and start making new steps today to prioritising your sleep. Dr. Caitlin is a sleep practitioner with 20 years experience in general practice. She's also had special interest in women's health and hormonal medicine. Her personal journey into the critical nature of sleep began 13 years ago when her own struggles began when she was trying to conceive children. And this led to insomnia. This started a research into how we can process stress, maintain hormone balance, and re-establish healthy sleeping patterns. I bet lots of people joining today thinking, I really, really need that. So hopefully Dr. Caitlin is going to give us some great insights into that today. Using her knowledge of physiology and medicine, she was able to develop sleep therapies, which can be used to trigger those essential biological switches in the steps towards sleep. So life-changing with these discoveries that she realised that as a doctor, this was where she wanted to focus her energy. And often this is where our passion comes from, isn't it? Life experiences, which just take us on the journey that we're meant to be on. And now she endeavours to bring to other people good quality, revitalising sleep so that they can reap the benefits as well. So Caitlin's personal journey is one which I know many of us can relate to, myself included. I struggled for many years to conceive, embarking on Clomid for my first child, IVF for my second. And then I think this happens quite commonly. So after it's kind of gone out of my mind 16 years later, after never conceiving naturally, I had the biggest shock of my life. And on reflection, the small lifestyle interventions that I put into place, the changing factors, had been prioritising my rest and recovery and my sleep, along with higher intake of healthy fats and stress reduction. But I think that big one, as I said, is what people always say to you, isn't it? Just don't think about it, which sounds really simple, but really isn't at all. And it's only when life just makes you to stop thinking about it that these things happen. So I'm really, really thrilled to invite you today, Dr. Caitlin, and I'm going to ask you to tell us a little bit more about yourself. Is there anything that I've missed?
Wonderful. So nice to be here and be talking about my favourite, most passionate subject, sleep, and in particular with women's health. Thank you for that brilliant summary. And I think the only thing that you maybe didn't talk about was actually the process of going to see your doctor when you have sleep problems, because it was one of the things that faced me. I was having sleep problems, and the first thing I turned to was my own medical knowledge, and thought I've been practicing at that point for sort of nearly 10 years, and I had been to medical school, and I tried to look back on my own teaching and realized that actually I hadn't been taught about sleep, the kind of natural process of sleep, how you achieve sleep. And I wasn't alone. The research says that doctors get between 30 minutes and 2.5 hours of teaching on sleep. And almost all of that is focused on medication, sleeping tablets, and also disordered breathing in sleep. And almost none of it is about the natural process of sleep and how you turn on the mechanism of sleep and what to do when it goes wrong. And so I suddenly realized there was this huge gap in my knowledge and other people's about the importance of sleep and how we achieve it. And so I then started researching all these basic elements, and actually sleep science is a relatively new specialty. In the UK, there's no specialist training that kind of goes through to sleep medicine. You kind of approach it from different angles, so neurology or respiratory medicine or general practice, because it is relatively new. We used to think that when you went to sleep, your brain sort of was like switching off a computer. It went into kind of sleep mode and you turned it back on in the morning. Actually, we now know that there could be nothing further from the truth. Actually, when we're sleeping, our brains are hugely busy using lots of energetic processes to cleanse and wash out our brain to make sure that we're able to process all the emotions, all the things that have happened that day, to be able to literally clean out all the waste products and then store memories, leaving you kind of fresh and revitalized for the next day. So sleep is really important for feeling good. And many of us, particularly in this modern busy world, are not sleeping well. And we know that we're getting probably on average about 1 to 2 hours less than we were a century ago.
Incredible. And that figure you gave, around 30 minutes to 2.5 hours education around sleep, is mind-boggling, isn't it? To say the actual impact that sleep has on so many different disease areas and the consequences of not getting adequate sleep is incredible, isn't it?
It is, and it's one of the areas that I'm really trying to work hard on, trying to get that education to doctors about sleep, because often when you have any medical, and almost every mental health condition presents with poor sleep, and you go see your doctor looking for help, and they'll often treat whatever the condition is, but actually there's a lot of conditions where we know that just improving the sleep will improve how someone feels. So just some examples: anxiety, depression, chronic pain, diabetes, cardiovascular disease. If you improve someone's sleep, all of those can get better, and some of them it can resolve the problem entirely. So it's so important to get sleep right.
There's a big missing piece around that education, definitely, isn't it? And our automatic assumption that we need to be prescribed something, when really going back to those small lifestyle interventions are incredibly powerful. So thank you for giving that kind of introduction there. That's wonderful. I wanted to just touch on your work. So with the Sleep Project, I know Dr. Arden explained a little bit about it in the previous podcast, but could you maybe tell us a little bit more about your work in the Sleep Project?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're all clinicians, doctors or nurses, all really passionate about the power of sleep and wanting to bring great sleep, particularly to those busy people who possibly really need it most. And we offer sleep diagnoses. So not all sleep conditions are the same. There's a whole range, and knowing what the problem is the first essential step to making sure you get the right treatment. And then we do sleep treatments, both for individuals and those within the corporate business environment. And we treat people from the youngest babies to the oldest of people. And we have evidence-based, science-backed solutions that will get people sleeping again. And we are so passionate about what we do, because probably the biggest feedback we get is people say this treatment was life-changing, because when we're not sleeping well, everything else goes wrong. And when you get the sleep right, suddenly you feel like you have your life back and you're able to enjoy things again. So it's a really satisfying job that we do, because at the end you get healthy, happy and more productive people as well.
Yeah. And that early intervention really reaps the rewards later on, doesn't it? And we spoke again in the last podcast about the time it takes for people to actually go and get help for the sleep, and it can be a long process, can't it? But actually, if people get that early intervention, they're getting the benefits for a lot longer. And I know you've got a sleep diagnosis tool, haven't you, as well? Questionnaire, which we can add into the show notes as well.
Yes, absolutely. So if you don't know why you're sleeping, if you go to our website, which is www.thesleepproject.life. And there's a Diagnose Your Sleep quiz, and you can go and find out, do you have insomnia? Is it your poor sleep quality? Do you have restless legs? What's the problem? What's the thing that's stopping you from getting to sleep? And we'll send you some information about how to fix it.
Wonderful. So I'll put a link to that in the show notes. And just be mindful as well that sometimes we just get used to things and just put up with things, don't we? And don't actually realise that it is an issue and it could be life-changing. So I would really encourage people to visit that.
And I think that's particularly true for people with insomnia, with poor sleep, that they've just learnt over years to cope with the consequences of poor sleep. It's almost become part of who they are, part of their relationship. And one of our recent clients said, I just wish I'd known that anything different was possible before. And that first step to make a change is the hardest one. But if people take away one message from today, is that if you're having poor sleep, it can change. The treatments are really, really effective. And like with my own experience, it was completely life-changing for me.
Wonderful. So it's just recognising that really you can make a change. You don't have to suffer in silence.
Yeah. And sometimes you need a little nudge. So if you're married to someone who doesn't sleep well, give them a nudge, because it's a hard thing to do, to make that decision that they're going to change it. So get them that support.
Absolutely. Thank you. So we've kind of highlighted already that there's not a lot of education for clinicians in terms of sleep, and not many people specialise in that area. Another area maybe that there hasn't been as much education as needed is some of the women's health conditions, in particular menopause, which we're going to dig deep into shortly. But in terms of sleep for women, what are the unique challenges that women face regarding sleep?
So women in general, the research seems to indicate that we need more sleep than men. So the guidelines are that most adults need between 7 and 9 hours. Now, just to highlight, our personal sleep need is individual to us. So some people may need 9, some people may need 7, and it's the amount that you need to wake up refreshed the next morning and feeling good. But it seems that women probably need 8 to 9, so on the higher end, and may even need an hour and a half more than men. But at the same time, women are much more vulnerable to sleep problems. And that is partly because of their hormones. So women's hormones change throughout their life, but also cyclically through the month. And both estrogen and progesterone are intricately linked to our sleep. And our brains are very rich in particularly estrogen receptors. And in the changes of those levels, it can really have a negative impact on our sleep. And then add on top of that, we know that people who are carers are much more likely to suffer with sleep problems, or those in caring professions, those who do shift work, which is more commonly women. And there's a really close link between anxiety and depression and poor sleep, and women are more vulnerable to both of those conditions. So we've got, as women, loads of reasons why we're more vulnerable to poor sleep. And then you add in pregnancy, childbirth, childcare, caring for parents, menopause transition and menopause. There's a whole host of times in our lives when sleep is likely to be detrimentally affected by what's going on in our lives.
There is, and I think that's really nicely how you've highlighted all those key events in a woman's life that it can be impacted. And I heard recently, and I don't know if you can shed clarity on this, in terms that women can adapt by waking up quicker during the night and then being awake more because they're designed to get up with the children in the night, and they can adapt to that easier than men. Is that true or not?
So women, there was a study looking at the waking people up from sleep and different sounds, and they sort of stumbled upon the finding that women woke up much more easily at a particular hertz of noise. It was actually a cat that they used in the study, but they then discovered that the cat cry was at the same frequency as a baby cry, and that the men would sleep through it, but the women would all wake up. So it seems our brains as women are trained to wake up much more easily to things like babies crying. And I know I became frustrated many times when my husband slept happily through to the baby starting to cry. And I'm sure there's many women out there who had that similar experience. And I don't like to give them an excuse, but actually they probably don't wake up from sleep in the same way that we are trained to kind of bounce out of sleep. That doesn't necessarily mean that we function better with it. And actually, it probably is that we're not dropping down into those deeper stages of sleep that are more refreshing. We're bouncing around the slightly lighter stages of sleep so that we're aware of the baby or those things around us. And looking at kind of women's sleep, they say our sleep doesn't return to normal until the youngest child is 6 years old. So that's a long time of poor quality sleep potentially, and probably some sleep deprivation thrown in as well.
Interesting. Yes, I do remember with my husband telling everyone that she was sleeping through and she was a wonderful sleeper. And I was absolutely frazzled walking around like a zombie. So yeah, definitely relate to that one. And yeah, good news that I've got less than a year to go till my sleep might go back to normal. So yeah, really reassuring. Thank you. So let's start to try and unpick like the different stages. And we'll focus on key stages such as like fertility, maybe thinking about when you've got a baby that's not sleeping and you think about going back to work, and then delve into the menopause as well, which I know is a really big topic right now. So starting with fertility, how can that really impact on your sleep? And you spoke about your experience as well. So let's start to think about that piece around fertility and how can sleep impact your chances of fertility, but actually going through that fertility journey can impact on your sleep as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's probably worth just taking a little step back to talk about circadian rhythms, because the circadian rhythm is really important for sleep. And so so inside every cell of our body, we've got clock genes, and in our brain, we have the kind of master clock. And the incredible thing is that they run pretty much to 24 hours, these internal clocks, and they regulate every single function within our body according to this 24-hour sleep-wake cycle. They've done studies where they lock people down in a cave without any clocks or lights or external contact, and even if they're down there for a long period of time, their internal clock, their sleep-wake cycle, when they get hungry, when the hormones are released, continue on roughly 24 hours. And so that internal system is running all the time and controls all of our hormones. And when we go to sleep and when we wake up are two of the main sort of the bookends for what's going on. And our melatonin are sort of one of the main hormones related to the sleep-wake cycle is released at night when it is dark. Now, our circadian rhythm or our internal body clock can't shift by more than half an hour per day. So that's why we feel so rubbish if we go on a long haul flight and we go to a different country. Our circadian rhythm is then out of sync. Now, when you take that to our hormones, our circadian rhythm is responsible for secreting every single hormone in our body. And if we're not sleeping well, that system gets a little bit messed up and we're not able to regulate all of those hormones as well. And that leads to disruptions, and it can impact on our fertility. So our chances of ovulating, the chances of carrying embryo successfully to term. But it also actually can affect men as well. So we know that if they're not getting enough sleep, their sperm count goes down, their sperm motility goes down, and their testosterone goes down. So actually on both sides, our fertility and chances of conceiving and carrying a baby to term is really impacted by our quality of sleep and our consistency of sleep. But I know from my own experience, the stress of going through that process often disrupts our sleep. And I was finding that actually it was really difficult to get to sleep. And the more pressure I had of, you must not be anxious, you must not worry, you must get some sleep if you want this to work, can all become just too much and really difficult to handle. And so hopefully today we can kind of talk about some of those things, those ways that we can use our body and our behavior to achieve better quality sleep, even when we are feeling super stressed.
Interesting. So am I right in thinking, now you've explained about how the circadian rhythm impacts on your hormones. Am I right in thinking, though, that your body, if your body's under stress because you're not sleeping as well, it prioritizes its bodily functions, and reproduction is one of those that it can deprioritize early on. So
absolutely. So our basic biological mechanisms have been kind of slowly evolved over hundreds and hundreds of years, and even before that, around what we need to survive. And at the point when we're in a stressful situation, it's not a great time to have a baby. And our bodies haven't been designed for this modern world. And so in the kind of biological terms, what we consider a stress would be an attack from a tiger, an attack from another tribe, all those things that would be kind of life-threatening danger situations. But unfortunately, that same system in our modern way of living can easily be triggered by normal everyday activities. So it could be missing the bus to go to work, or getting an email from our boss, or it could be a social media post that doesn't get enough likes. And this tiger sympathetic response, the sort of fight or flight system that's designed to keep us alive, is being triggered by lots of other things. And that can impact our cortisol, our stress hormone level. And when that happens, we deprioritize our hormones and our fertility. And that would have worked really well if we were kind of in caveman times. But right now, in the way that we're living, actually, it can make things more difficult for us.
Yeah. So, yeah, great tip. That baby's got to think it's a safe place to be, to trying to minimize stress as possible, as much as you possibly can. And I guess that's what we're going to come on to next. That's going to be my next question. It sounds dead simple, doesn't it? But actually, when you're worrying about conceiving and you've got the stress of maybe going through different fertility treatments, how can we actually reduce that stress and enable positive sleep?
Yeah, and it's really hard because turning off that stress response, it's kind of a learned thing. We go through our lives probably triggering this system all the time, and a lot of the time we are so much living in that fight or flight mode that we don't even recognize it anymore. And so there's lots of different techniques, and the first thing to say is it takes practice, and you may not see the responses straight away. For the kind of toning down that stress response. But there's lots of different ways where we're almost hijacking our biological responses in order to tone down our stress levels. And a few different ways that you can do it. For me, one of the ones that I like best is probably breath work, because that is basically hijacking our breathing to signal to our brain that it's safe and it's okay, and we're in an environment where we don't need to trigger our sympathetic response. And the basic thing is, if people think about when they've been frightened, imagine a sort of balloon pops next to them, or there's a loud bang, you notice your heart going faster, and normally you're breathing faster. Breath work works around controlling your breathing to extend the out breath and slow down the breathing. As you extend the out breath, the heart tends to slow down. And then the more that you do that, the brain then gets the signal that it's safe, and then switches from the stress sympathetic response to the parasympathetic response, which is the rest and digest one. And that can be really useful to use. And there's very simple exercises that you can do to try and teach yourself how to switch. And the first time you do it, you probably will start to fight against it because we're not used to relaxing. But the more you do it, you almost feel like almost a gooey, sleepy feeling comes over your body. And you need to try and practice it at times when you're not feeling particularly stressed. So that when you are feeling stressed, it's almost like riding a bike. The skill then comes more naturally and easily, and you can just switch a little bit easier. The other ones that I really like, there's something called the body scan, which is a kind of guided meditation to relax all the different parts of your body. But there's other things that you need to sort of try different ones. Exercise can be brilliant at switching off your stress response. Meditation can be good, but it takes a little while to learn. But also just things in your behavior, like having a bedtime routine, slowly making sure that you wind down in the evening in the way that we instinctively do for children. We also need to give that same sort of kindness and slowing down to our own bodies so that we can start to anticipate sleep and almost recognize our own tiredness. Because I think a lot of the time we're go, 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 go. And we get to the end of the day and we think it's possible just to switch that off. But actually it takes a little bit of time to tell our bodies, actually, it's okay, time to rest and feel our own natural instinctive tiredness.
Wow, lots of valuable nuggets of information there. Thank you. And I think, yeah, I like that bit about try it out when you're not stressed, because that's how you then create the habits for when you do get stressed. And I often talk about willpower a lot and say, no, I really don't believe that you can always have high willpower, because we're all human and sometimes that plummets, doesn't it? But if you've got those foundations of those habits in place, it's far more likely that you're going to go to those habits when you are in that state of stress as well. And I love how you're describing the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. And I always think of the parasympathetic nervous system as like a parachute coming down. You know, you're like letting out all that stress and it's coming down. And yeah, love that bit about the transition time as well. We think we can rush here, there, and everywhere, don't we? And just fail to miss it. Oh, it has to be a few minutes, doesn't it? But just that transition time from one thing to the next. So we're going to leave this to later on, but I think this is an appropriate time to just try it out now. So could you maybe just take us through a really simple breathing exercise that we could do? This is a warning, anyone who's driving right now listening to this, maybe don't embrace this fully and try it when you're not driving. But maybe just, a really, really simple breathing exercise that people can do.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things I'm just going to touch on, which is a little bit from meditation, but actually helps to make breath work a little bit better. So a lot of us think of almost our consciousness, our being, whoever we are, of sitting up at the top of the head, almost like in that film sort of Men in Black, where there's a little person with control buttons and everything sat in at the top of our head as the control center. And what we try and do as part of the kind of breath work is almost let go of that person. So almost if you shut your eyes, if you're not driving a car, and imagine that little person up in the top of your brain controlling what you're doing, and just try and almost melt that person down into your body and feel your chest expanding, and almost move your consciousness down into the bottom of your chest and feel your breath coming in and out of your lungs. Feel your ribs expanding, feel your chest opening, and try and imagine, instead of that person being up in your brain, that they're sliding down the back of your neck and into your chest as you're breathing. And then I'm going to do a really simple, what's called box breathing. So I want you to do a breath in for 4. So 3, 2, 1. Hold. 4, 3, 2, 1. Out. 3, 2, 1. Hold. 3, 2, 1. In. 2, 3, 4. Out. 2, 3, 4. And then if you just carry on doing in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, hold for 4. That can be a really nice one to try and relax your brain. And the more you can feel yourself down in your chest, the better it will go. If you go on, we've got a YouTube channel. the underscore sleep underscore project. And we've got some really good breath works, one particularly for anxiety and sleep, which can be really helpful for drifting off at night.
I love that. I love that. Brilliant. And actually, it's just such a short space of time that could have a really big impact on your whole stress levels and your whole.
Absolutely. And that kind of imagining yourself, try and move it, your presence or your kind of sensations down into your chest can be really helpful for being able to consistently doing the breath work. Because normally if you're all up in your headspace, actually it's very difficult to focus on the breathing. But if you're really focused on how the muscles feel, how the chest feels, that expansion, it can make a big difference.
Yeah. You can actually kind of feel that tension moving away, can't you, as you do that?
Yeah, your kind of idea of the parachute coming down, it very much feels like that when you switch it on. You kind of feel that sudden relaxation of your body. And as you said, try and fit in just 5 minutes during a quiet time during your day. And the studies say that that can improve your sleep and reduce your anxiety levels. And most people would struggle to get half an hour in their day to do it. But 5 minutes, most people can do, even if it's just at the beginning of the lunch break or on the bus ride to work, or when you're stuck in traffic. Just doing it for a moment can make a big difference.
And it's sometimes just reframing our thoughts, isn't it? Sometimes you think, oh, I don't have time to do this. But actually, you're costing yourself time by not doing it because your productivity levels are dipping, your stress levels are increasing. So it really doesn't make sense not to invest those small pockets of time to do it.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for that. So is there anything else that you think we need to cover around fertility?
I think a lot of us put a lot of pressure on ourselves at that point. And it can be a really hard time, and kind of adding in extra pressure of you must not worry, you must get good sleep can actually make it even more difficult. And so I think reaching for help from those people around you, taking the pressure off where you possibly can. I know for me, the point at which I'd totally given up hope of anything ever working was the time that it worked exactly like you. And so sometimes there isn't that magic thing, but figuring out whatever the way it is that you can find that little bit of relaxation in your life, those moments of calm, really, really important.
Yeah, thank you. So kind of moving on now from the topic of fertility, thinking about maybe pregnancy, but then also, when the baby arrives and you quite a lot of sleepless nights, but then going into that stage where you're thinking, I've got to go back to work as well. I've got a baby that's not sleeping properly and I've got to go back to work. That can be really stressful, can't it? And that can be really challenging for our sleep.
Yeah, and I think it's really tough because pregnancy is a time when you don't sleep well. And the last trimester often is the worst sleep when you have the highest sleep need. Then most people are sleep deprived through the delivery. Then newborn babies are not known for good sleep. And most babies don't sleep through the night until 6 months. And many don't sleep through the night for much, much longer. And so many of us are going back to work at the point when our babies aren't sleeping through the night. And that can be really hard. We don't function well. We find everything more difficult. Just our productivity levels, as you say, drop down. And then we're trying to juggle lots of things on a brain that's sleep deprived. And so I think part of what's important is making sure that you have a good team around you if you can to support you, but also recognizing you don't need to be superwoman, and potentially we're asking a lot of ourselves, sort of careers, looking after the house, being loving, kind parents, and sometimes just going, it doesn't matter if the house is a bit of a mess. I need to prioritize my well-being. But also, I think the workplace can make a really big difference. So supporting women as they go back into work can make a huge difference to whether they're able to stay within that role, whether they enjoy that role, their productivity. And if you are finding that your baby's not sleeping through the night and it's impacting on your health, getting help, because actually sleep therapy for babies can make a big difference in getting them to sleep through the night without assistance. And that can actually improve maternal bonding, improve maternal mental health, and make mums and actually the whole family feel better. So there's, for some people, if their baby's waking lots of times through the night and they're feeling fine and they're happy with it, brilliant, because some babies don't sleep through and that's okay. But if you're finding it's impacting on your relationships, your work, then do get help, because normally, I mean, babies are hugely versatile. Within a few days, we can start seeing real improvements in baby sleep.
I wish I'd known about you many years ago. I think, yeah, love that part. We're not superwoman and we can't be superwoman. And the demands of the world right now, that we should still be doing that traditional role, but also have a career as well. And I think it's getting that balance, isn't it? Because it's good for us to have that independence, to have that career and be challenging a career. But it's also recognizing that we've got lots of added things going on as well.
And planned rest as well. I think making space for it, because if it comes at the bottom of your list of priorities, then actually you're never going to have time, because our priorities, our lists are always full. I heard a lovely thing about someone who every month they blocked out a weekend in their calendar and put the Smiths coming to stay. And actually that was her thing for that weekend's mine for downtime. And by writing something in your calendar, in your diary of this is my downtime and this is precious, can actually make us prioritize it, because we can't do everything and be everything to everyone unless actually we're feeling pretty strong ourselves.
That's a wonderful idea. Make it an appointment, so that it's appointment with yourself to have that downtime. And even maybe putting those breath work, little breathing exercises in your day could be an appointment in your diary as well, so that it's a lot easier to do and stick to. So thank you.
Yeah.
So maybe now moving on, we've touched on fertility, we've touched on how difficult it can be when you've got little ones that aren't sleeping and you're going back to work. Big topic that there's been a lot more awareness around, and quite rightly so, is the menopause. So how do our hormones during menopause impact on our sleep? But then it's a double-edged sword, isn't it? Because that sleep deprivation exacerbates lots of the menopause symptoms as well. So let's start by thinking about how that, reduction and fluctuation in hormones during the perimenopause stage can really impact and impair our sleep.
Brilliant. And I'm so glad we're talking about it, because it is really important. And one of the first things is just to say, actually, sleep symptoms are one of the most common menopause symptoms. It's one of the ones that comes on the earliest and often begins in the early 40s. And so there are probably women out there who are just starting to sleep a little bit badly and may not have other menopause symptoms, and just recognizing that it could be part of the early stages of the perimenopause can be very helpful. So the perimenopause in general starts 7 to 9 years before the menopause. So menopause is considered 12 months without a menstrual cycle. And on average in the UK, the average age is 51 years. So early 40s, you're probably starting to become perimenopausal in some ways, and the symptoms may be beginning then. And the quality of sleep can start to go down at that point. So just to talk about kind of a normal menstrual cycle, we know that women, for the first 2 weeks after their period, so as they're starting to become more fertile, that's the part of the sleep where they sleep best, so part of the cycle where they sleep best. The second 2 weeks, so the 2 weeks before your menstrual period, is the time when your sleep is the worst quality. And that's because progesterone is very linked to our temperature control, and temperature control is very important for initiating sleep. And so when our hormones are all over the place, so during perimenopause, Our normal cycles aren't always the same. Our estrogen, our progesterone is often sort of bouncing up and down. Our FSH levels may be starting to rise, though that might not happen until later on. But that can impact our quality of sleep. And often, actually, we need more sleep during those phases because our quality of sleep is worse. So you may find that people wake up feeling just not as refreshed. And that's because the quality of the sleep isn't as good. And then they need more in order to feel refreshed in the morning.
Super.
Yeah. And as you said, really importantly, every single one of the menopause symptoms is worse with poor sleep. And if you improve your sleep, all of those can get better. And the one that's particularly linked is hot flushes. So hot flushes and poor sleep go together. And they think that it probably is the same mechanism in the brain that causes both of them, because sometimes you can be woken from a hot flush, but sometimes you can wake up and that triggers a hot flush as well. And we know that the more hot flushes you have, the worse your sleep quality is likely to be.
Fascinating. And also 2 other contributing factors to hot flushes are alcohol and caffeine, which also impair our sleep. So
yes. Yeah. So alcohol is one of these things that very much many women who've been able to drink absolutely with kind of enjoyment up to the menopause or perimenopause often find that they reach the perimenopausal phase and suddenly the relationship with alcohol changes. And that may be because of the impact on sleep. So alcohol is really good at knocking us out. So for any of us that have got too drunk and fallen asleep on the sofa, you'll recognize that it does knock you out. But what it does is it reduces the sleep quality. It makes you much more likely to wake frequently, particularly in the early hours of the morning. And it suppresses our REM or our dream sleep. And dream sleep is really important for our emotional processing. And that may be why during the kind of perimenopausal phase, if we're not sleeping well, actually we've become a little bit more emotionally unstable because we're not getting that good quality dream sleep, and alcohol can impact on that dream sleep. So for lots of reasons, getting rid of alcohol, particularly during the perimenopausal phase, or reducing it significantly can improve the menopause symptoms, but also can improve sleep as well.
Yes.
And caffeine, yes. Caffeine kind of, so the important thing about caffeine is that it's got a half-life. So it takes 6 hours for half of it to leave your body, which is quite a long time when you think about it. So if you, for example, have a coffee first thing in the morning, 6 hours later, half of it will be gone. And then 6 hours later, there'll still be a quarter in your body. I don't really mind people having coffee in the morning if they enjoy it, but probably nothing beyond 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Otherwise, it's likely to impact on sleep.
Yes, thank you. And I think those, even 2 small life changes like that could have a really big impact on your sleep and menopausal symptoms. Sometimes it's about digging deep and understanding what coping mechanisms are you putting in place, and are they really helping you in the long term, or is it just a quick short-term fix?
But I think also lots of people use alcohol as that sort of ceremonial end of the day. Put your feet up, have a glass of wine. And so it's really important not to lose that. You just need to swap it for something else. So there's loads of really good non-alcoholic alternatives, or you can make yourself a kind of non-alcoholic cocktail, something so you still feel like you're treating yourself and giving yourself that moment, that excuse to have a rest, but possibly just remove the alcohol element from it.
Yeah, and that's the key, isn't it? When you're trying to make changes, don't just take something out, replace it with something else, so that you've still got that treat to yourself and that maybe transition as well, but make sure that it's a positive one. And Jessie, you mentioned when going through the menopause, and we've been talking about young babies as well. Like, times have changed, haven't they? Women are having babies a lot later now, so it's quite possible, isn't it, that women can maybe have a baby, and then also be going through the perimenopause as well at the same time. So you've kind of got a double whammy, and you might be thinking that that sleep disruption is due to your baby and just being used to getting up in the night, when actually perimenopause could be coming in as well. Do you see that quite frequently in terms of people not recognizing that?
Yeah, I think it's happening more and more. I run a menopause clinic, and a lot of the women there are caring for young children at the same time as going through the menopause transition, and often at the height of their career, as well as often caring for parents as well. And there is a lot of factors that are contributing to their poor sleep. And I think this is one of the things to think about is everyone has a kind of threshold for insomnia, that no matter kind of who you are, if there's a cocktail of things, or it's a bad cocktail of things, you'll reach that threshold. And I think part of the reason women are more vulnerable is they often have more of those sort of factors going on that get them closer to the threshold. And then you add one more in, perimenopause often, and it pushes you over the threshold into that kind of insomnia category. And then it can be really hard because you're struggling to get to sleep, even though it's the time when probably you need the sleep most.
Yeah. So maybe going into more of a solution focused angle, what are the things that you think, we can really do to support sleep during that menopause period?
So I think it really needs to be a very holistic approach. So there's some things that you can do lifestyle wise, and the big one, exercise is big, cutting down on alcohol or getting rid of it completely, making sure you give yourself that bedtime routine, relaxation, trying to prepare the sort of body and mind ready for sleep. Consistency is really important. So going to bed and waking up at the same time each day, even at the weekends, is very good for your circadian rhythm, your internal body clock, because that helps to support good quality sleep. And then if you're having perimenopausal or menopausal symptoms, approaching it in a really holistic way. So if you're having vaginal urinary symptoms, treat those. Make sure that if you've got joint pain, that you manage that. If you're feeling stressed or anxious, use strategies to improve that, which may be mindfulness or breath work or relaxation. For those who want to take HRT or can take HRT, because not everyone can, that can be really effective in improving the menopause symptoms, but also improving the quality of sleep. And then the other thing that's really powerful for all types of sleep problems related to insomnia, whether it's menopause related or not, is cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. And this is separate. This is different than what you might have for depression. It is a really practical set of tools that you can use to help trigger sleep, to maintain sleep, improve sleep quality, and change your behaviors around sleep to really get back to healthy sleep patterns. And it's effective. Probably 70-80% of people resolve their insomnia with CBTI. It's kind of the gold standard treatment, but probably not enough people realize that it can be so helpful.
Yeah, Dr. Ida mentioned that as well, and that 80% success rate is a phenomenal figure, isn't it? I worked in pharma for a long time, and an 80% success rate is really powerful. So anyone who's maybe feeling a bit like overwhelmed, you mentioned all the different things that women could be juggling at that time, and you're feeling a bit overwhelmed, thinking, I can't see the wood for the trees, maybe just really prioritizing your sleep and investing a bit of time now could change the trajectory of your life for the next 10 years if you're going through perimenopause and menopause. So it really is wise to just invest that time early, because lots of different things can happen in your life due to the way that you're feeling and the complications that are arising due to that perimenopause. So I would really encourage you, if you can't see the wood for the trees, just take those small steps early on to invest in helping you sleep. So to give a bit more reason and a bit of a motivation as to why take action, we've spoken a bit about those short-term symptoms that you might get and what you might struggle with. And you touched a little bit on some of those long-term complications, but just tell us a bit more about some of the long-term risks of not prioritizing our sleep.
Yeah, and I think the biggest one is mental health. That we know that insomnia is a risk factor for both anxiety and depression, and that those who have insomnia are probably 2 to 3 times more likely to go on to have significant anxiety or depression. And if we know that treating sleep and improving sleep early on can literally prevent that episode from occurring. And so almost rethinking the way you consider sleep, rather than it just being something that we need to do, actually being fundamentally important for our well-being, and seeing it as an early warning sign that something's going wrong. And if you don't give it the attention it needs, then you're much more likely to have significant mental health problems that follow. But it also impacts on our physical health. So chronic diseases such as heart attacks, strokes, diabetes. It can also, if we're not sleeping enough or getting good quality sleep, our hormones that control appetite are regulated by our circadian rhythm. So ghrelin and leptin, which control when we feel full and our hunger, both get dysregulated if we're not sleeping as well. And that can promote unhealthy food choices, but it also can promote weight gain and obesity. And when you're sleeping poorly, it pushes up your cortisol, your stress hormone levels, which again can impact on your regulation of sugars and your putting on weight and fat in particular. And so addressing your sleep and getting your sleep really good can actually have really profound impacts on both your physical and your mental health, but also kind of how you feel and how you function during the day.
That's an interesting one, isn't it? Because it's about getting that balance. Because often we think about, managing our weight, doing lots and lots of exercise, but actually, if you're sleep deprived and you may be overtraining, you're probably going to be overeating as well, because your hunger hormones are out of sync. But also that sleep is important, isn't it, for like growth factors, like building your muscle as well, which increases your metabolic rate. So it's about getting that balance, I guess, isn't it, and understanding what's right for you, because also the exercise is really good in terms of stimulating neurotransmitters in your hippocampus, which can impact on your depression. So there's lots of links, isn't there? It's how do you create that optimal balance?
Yeah, that's such a good question. And I may be biased, but I think the studies and research support this. They used to think of sleep as like a pillar of wellness. Actually, it's the foundation, because without sleep, your exercise program is impossible. Your diet, you start eating unhealthily. Your kind of general well-being and mental health falls apart. So sleep is that kind of foundation to them all. And this is why actually elite sports teams are now having sleep experts as part of it, because we know that if you don't sleep well, you're much more likely to injure yourself during training. You're not likely to perform nearly as well. So first, prioritize your sleep. Make sure you're getting sufficient sleep, and don't set your alarm at silly o'clock to go to the gym. If you're depriving yourself of sleep, actually, you're probably doing yourself a disservice. That get your sleep right first, then fit in your exercise. Your good diet hopefully will follow, just because you won't be in that stress response. And then after that, the rest of it will follow. But first, make sure you're getting sufficient sleep. And I get asked, how do you know how much sleep you need? And a good way of doing this is to think of like the most relaxing holiday you've been on. So no kids, no climbing mountains. You're kind of just sat there having a lovely time, relaxing, and not the first or second night when you're probably catching up on sleep, but on your third night of a lovely holiday. How long do you sleep for if you don't have to be woken up by an alarm? And that's how much sleep you need on an average night. And for most people, they're probably depriving themselves of 20 minutes, half an hour every night compared to what their sleep need is. And first, make sure you're giving yourself enough sleep opportunity, and make sure that you are putting in your wind down routine before that, because if we're still in stress response mode, you actually don't feel the tiredness within your body and you just kind of power through. And so you almost need that wind down to feel that kind of inner tiredness, fall asleep and get the amount of sleep that you need. And if you're getting enough sleep, you should wake up before your alarm clock goes off in the morning, and then feel good the next day.
Great insights there. So I think, yeah, for people listening, it's about being a bit true to yourself, listening to your own body, and our body can tell us a lot. And sometimes not comparing yourself to other people, because we're all really individual, aren't we? And we've got to go with what our body wants. And I love the bit about not setting an alarm, and that was one of the massive changes I made. Years ago, I would always set my alarm early to train and thought that was the way, whereas I've completely changed my mindset on it and feel I train better and have to do less because I prioritise my sleep more.
I think that's a really good insight. And the research says that the exercise doesn't need to be intense. It doesn't need to be crazy strenuous. It needs to be consistent. And so making space in your day somewhere just for half an hour per day, if you can, or incorporating it into your walk to the bus, or taking your call on. I know you mentioned we could do this call while we walked. And I love that idea that in your diary you say, oh, let's do it as a walk and talk call, and trying to get that into your day is so brilliant.
Yeah. And, if you're thinking I'm too busy, I'm working, I'm juggling kids and all this kind of thing, just look at your diary, because not everything has to be in front of a screen, does it? Just try to push the boundaries a little bit, because you're probably not just helping yourself, you're helping someone else as well. So, Dr. Caitlin, I'm really conscious of your time. We're drawing to the end, and there's so much we could talk about. I have one quick question around monitoring your sleep. I know you said during the menopause we probably need more sleep because we're not getting that quality sleep. What are your thoughts? I'm very mixed on sleep monitoring, but I'd love to know your thoughts on it. So should we be monitoring our sleep so that we can actually see the quality of sleep we've had, or can monitors increase our anxiety levels if we're not getting enough sleep?
So it's a difficult question, because there's no question that these monitors are getting better quality and they seem to be part of our everyday lives. But in general, particularly if you're a poor sleeper or someone who has a tendency to worry about things, they actually tend to make our sleep worse. The more we obsess about our sleep and how much we're getting, it make us switch on that stress response and make it more difficult to get to sleep in the first place and stay asleep. And then actually the quality of the sleep is worse because of that worry. And so we tend to, when we're treating people for sleep problems, tell them not to use a monitor. We do know that most of the monitors, the technology about whether you're asleep or you're awake is relatively good, but the different stages of sleep really aren't there yet. And so it's much more important you go on how you feel and how you function, rather than what your watch says about the quality of your sleep. Because the technology is not good enough really to tell you that. And the more you kind of worry about, oh, it says I didn't get enough deep sleep last night, that it can have a detrimental impact on your sleep. If you have it and it works for you, and it works as a motivating factor to spend more time focused on getting enough sleep opportunity, then fine. But if you find that you're starting to worry about it and check it and it becomes an obsession, then I would just get rid of it, because there's no evidence that they have a positive impact, particularly on people with insomnia. Those are probably the group where focusing too much on sleep can actually make things much, much worse.
Yeah. So even more of a reason to be getting to know yourself even better and really understanding you. And this also aligns with testing for menopause around your hormones. It's not always a reputable result because our hormones change so much. So it's all about understanding your symptoms. So before we go, can you tell us what are your non-negotiables for a sleep routine?
Okay, so I gave up alcohol 3 years ago and I don't drink at all. I think that maybe I'm quite far on the end of that spectrum, but I really notice it affects my sleep. I do exercise every day, even if it's just a 10-minute walk. I make sure I get some natural sunlight every morning, because natural sunlight is really good, both for kind of locking in your circadian rhythm, but also getting kind of your natural endorphins and your vitamin D and all those important things. I actually have started keeping my phone in my office and don't look at it after the kids come home from school. I'm not 100% on that one, but that's an ambition, I'm telling you, so I keep to it a little bit more. And I'm very consistent in my bedtime and wake up time. And so that I don't do kind of lie-ins at the weekend. I wake up at the same time every day. I think those are the main ones for me. And I've always had quite a healthy diet, I would say. Luckily, my mum was a brilliant cook, but I think we haven't talked about that, but having a diet that's balanced with fruit and vegetables and not too much processed food, not too much sugar, I think that makes a big difference to the quality of our sleep as well as everything else.
Thank you. Yes, that's a missed opportunity. Maybe we could pick on another time specifically around nutrition. But yeah, thank you. Some really, really great top tips and foundations there to a good, healthy sleep routine. And also by telling other people that you're going to do something, that you're trying to do something, you're making yourself accountable. So that's something else to take away. If you're going to start doing something, make a change, tell someone else, because then you also feel accountable to that as well. So last thing just to say is a massive, massive thank you for your knowledge, expertise, wonderful information today. And if people want to find out more about you and how they can work with you, where can they find you?
So we've got a website, thesleepproject.life. Come and have a look, do our Diagnose Your Sleep quiz. We've got some free information around sort of baby sleep schedules and planning for a good night's sleep, and lots of information that you can get. We also are on Instagram and YouTube on the_sleep_project. And we've got the breath work on there and lots of advice that people can start using straight away. And the body scan we can also do through our website. So please do come and check those out. Lots of stuff to get you sleeping. And if you do need help, do get in touch. It would be lovely to hear from anyone.
Amazing. So before you stop listening, I want you to pause. What did you take away from the podcast today? What small steps will you start? And what did you hear that you know could help someone else to make small steps to lead their health, well-being, productivity and performance? Please do share this episode and please subscribe to the podcast. And remember that Leap Health are here to provide workplace, health, well-being and performance workshops, one-to-one coaching and bespoke corporate solutions to help the world make small steps to leap health, well-being, productivity and performance. Please do get in touch. It's Anna at leaphealth.co.uk. Have a great day.